Shall we get started?
Recording in progress.
Oh, thank you, Malia. Nicole's on her way back in. Well, welcome to this SHS Tri-County Planning Body Meeting, October 11th, 2023. Good to see folks. We have, I think, a record number of folks who have joined live and in person today, which is exciting. So it's great to see faces of real human beings in three-dimensional reality. Why don't we just dive in? We'll start with introductions and we'll move through some housekeeping and jump into our agenda for today. So I'm going to start on screen with folks. I'll call you off and we'll just go around the room and then we'll move into our conversation. So I'll go in order that I see. Mike, we'll start with you.
Hi, Mike Liu with Food One Shopping Center and community member.
Great, thank you. Steve?
Steve Rudman, he, him pronouns, community member.
Thank you. Vahid?
Vahid, he, him pronouns, housing and community development in Clackamas County.
Zoe?
Hi, soy Copiano, she, her, ella, Housing and Stability Director, Community Action, Washington County.
Thank you. Brianna?
Hi folks, Brianna Flores, she, they pronouns. I work with the joint office on the SHS team in Multnomah County.
Thank you. Monta?
Monte Knutson, Bridges the Change. I use he, him pronouns.
Thank you. Chair Smith?
Hi, Tuya Smith, Chair, Clackamas County Commission.
Thank you. Jess?
Good morning or evening, Jess Larson, she and her pronouns, Washington County's team.
Thank you. Kanoi?
Good afternoon, Kanoi Eggleston, she, her pronouns, Multnomah County at the joint office.
Great. Chair Harrington?
Good afternoon, everyone. Catherine Harrington, Washington County Board Chair.
Great, thank you. Let's go to the room. I think that's everybody there. Liam?
Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Liam Frost, he, him, his pronouns, Assistant Director of Housing at Metro. And also a word to tech folks, Adam Brown needs to be elevated. His words, not mine.
I love it. Patricia?
Good afternoon, Patricia Rojas, she, her pronouns, Housing Director for Metro.
Great, thank you. Matt?
Matt Chapman, he is co-chair of the TCPB.
Thank you, Matt. Jesse?
Jesse Adams, she, her, I'm on the Washington County team.
Commissioner Jayapal?
Good afternoon, everyone. Sushila Jayapal, she, her pronouns, Multnomah County Commissioner.
Ariella?
Hi, everyone. Ariella Dolan with Kearns and West, and I'll be developing the meeting summary today.
Thank you. Ben Duncan, he, him, your facilitator. Nicole?
Hi, everyone. Nicole Larson, she, her. I am the city liaison for Imago Dei Community and a licensed clinical social worker.
Thank you. Councilor Lewis?
Christine Lewis, she and her pronouns, represent District 2 on Metro Council.
Giovanni?
Afternoon, everyone. Giovanni Bautista, he, him, his pronouns, and I'm an Associate Housing Policy Analyst for Metro.
Flows right off the tongue there. Thank you. Mindy?
Hi, Mindy Statlander, she, her pronouns. I'm the CEO of Health Share of Oregon.
Mercedes?
Hello, everybody. Mercedes Elizalde, she and her pronouns, and the Advocacy Director at Latino Network.
Ebony?
Abby Ahern, Metro. Just kidding. Ebony Brown, she, hers. I am the co-chair of this body and also the Executive Director of Greater Good Northwest.
Thank you. Abby?
Very confusing. Abby Ahern, she, her pronouns, Metro Housing Policy.
And Malia?
Malia Dieter, she, her, Metro Housing.
And last but not least, the elevated Adam Brown.
I got the Zoom lingo wrong. It's promoted. I found that out.
There we go.
Good afternoon, everybody. Adam Brown. I use he, him pronouns. I'm the Deputy Director of Clackamas County's Health, Housing, and Human Services.
Great, thank you. Did I miss anybody? Yvette? Yvette, I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Yvette, you've been elevated. You're on mute, though. You're very happy, though. I've absorbed that energy.
Hello, everybody. I'm so sorry. I was having a little trouble with my computer, but I am here. I'm Yvette Hernandez. My pronouns are she and her, and I am a community member.
Great, thank you. So now, did I miss anybody? Okay, I didn't write down the safety script, but just so folks know, we're on the second floor? Third floor. Okay, we're on the third floor. There's an exit in the corner. Where do we meet now? Just along the street, right? Because the front is being middle of the street now, on the sidewalk outside if we do have to leave. There's also a defibrillator in the back corner of the room if, for whatever reason, we need to use that. So let's walk through our agenda and kind of review what we're going to do today. We do have public comment coming up after we approve our meeting summary. If there's anybody in the audience that's interested in public comment, you can raise your hand and we'll put you in the queue. I'll repeat the directions when we get to that place. We'll hear some updates from staff on the 6 regional goals and other regional efforts, move into a progress report, and a pretty significant amount of time for us to talk about the work that's happening on related to technical assistance. We'll have a kind of a new format that we haven't used in this process before, with a panel of some of your peers, as well as hearing from some of our county partners to walk through that conversation. We'll move into part 2 out of 3 of our regional investment fund discussion, again, kind of continuing to build our foundational understanding of that important part of our work and relationship. And then we'll do some closing next steps, and we will adjourn by 6 p.m. Any questions on what we're hoping to achieve today? Israel, can I call on you to say hello?
Hello, Israel Bear, him, Metro Housing Communications.
Great, thank you. So just, if you couldn't hear, Israel Bear, Metro Communications is in the house. All right, so co-chairs, can I pass it to you for our meeting summary?
Motion to approve previous meeting summary.
So I have a motion by our co-chair Ebony, a second by our other co-chair Matt. All those in favor of adopting the, what month is it, September? September meeting summary, say aye or thumbs up. Any objections or abstentions? Not seeing any, the meeting summary is approved. So we'd like to offer space for public comment. So this is a chance for those in the audience, from the public, to provide input to the group. It's not a place for deliberation, but I will ask if there's anyone in the audience who would like to offer public comment to the Tri-County Planning Body. This would be the time to do so. So you can raise your hand. I don't see anybody on the phone, but if there's anybody in the audience interested in public input. Okay, last call for public comment. Not seeing any, we will move on. So I believe, Abby, I'm going to pass it to you.
Great. So I'm going to give you all an update on the 6 regional goals. You should have received a monthly progress report in your email correspondence from Metro.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Good luck. Thank you. Take care. Yeah.
And so that is something that you can count on continuing to receive before each meeting, which with a little update on each of our 6 goals. Some of our goals, obviously technical assistance, we're going to talk a lot about today, so I won't give an update on that one. So for unit and landlord recruitment, focus strategies, our consultant has interviewed stakeholders, facilitated listening sessions and focus groups, met with housing service providers, and now they're in the process of finalizing their work. They're doing that finalization through conversations with the Tri-County Landlord Liaison Work Group, who you all met a few months ago when they were talking about this topic earlier. They were talking about risk mitigation funding earlier. And we are working towards a presentation to the TCPB next month from that work. For coordinated entry, the Regional Alignment Work Group, Coordinated Entry Regional Alignment Work Group, it's a mouthful, we'll think about that name, held a kickoff meeting last month. Following that meeting, our consultant Homebase is starting to reach out for interviews and to just help level set around the work we're gonna do, and we are in the process of scheduling ongoing work group meetings for the county leads on coordinated entry to start doing that alignment work. For healthcare systems alignment, I think we talked about in the past, the Medicaid waiver Tri-County Partnership Group continues to meet and is working on some recommendations on operationalizing the waiver benefits. I think we mentioned before the population focus shifted from severe and persistent mental illness to those at risk of experiencing homelessness. And with that shift, we brought the community action agencies in the 3 counties into the room as they're usually the hub of at-risk rental assistance work. So training, not a huge update on training, similar to technical assistance, and Liam's going to talk about Metro's sort of role on this later, and he'll touch on training as well, just for a moment. And then living wage, we are similarly contracted with Home Base to work on this goal area. They will soon convene a stakeholder work group and start looking at compensation practices locally and nationally. And then the goal there will be to have a draft framework to TCPB within about 5 months. Yeah, so those are our 6 regional goals.
Great, so first, any questions on what was just presented or reviewed in your pre-work, Mercedes?
I was just wondering if you could say a little bit more about who the stakeholders were in the landlord group. It kind of only names housing providers, but do we know kind of who the community of focus is there?
We can get you that list, and you'll get a full comprehensive list in next month's presentation as well from Focus Strategies. But we could probably get that list much sooner to you too.
Yeah, we'll
I didn't
mark that
realize
as
how
a-
close that mic is.
Yeah, we'll just swallow it. We'll put that as a follow-up, Mercedes. Any other questions around the update that's been provided? Okay, not seeing, there was a couple other pieces. Were you going to speak to them?
Yeah, I was going to speak to that, and I was going to jump off of what Abby mentioned last there around the living wage work group that Homebase is going to convene. They'll be reaching out to service providers who are members of the Tri-County Planning Body. We know that a lot of you have been working on this issue in your own organizations. We would love for you to participate in that work group and help shape some of the recommendations. So they'll be reaching out to you over the next week, I think. And you can say if you're ready to participate. If you're not available, that's also fine, but we would love you to do so. Okay. I also wanted to provide an update on the survey that went out twice since last month's presentation by Dan Cole from Multnomah County, who provided the opportunity to TCPB members to provide feedback and input on the project that he presented on last month. We got 5 respondents, 3 of whom want to participate. This is your last chance. If you do want to participate in providing feedback to Dan, please email Malia Dieters directly. If you can't find Malia's email, I think you have mine. So this is your last chance to do that. I mentioned TCPB recruitment. Every meeting that we're in, we have 1 vacancy, and we are going to be closing this current round of recruitment on October 20th to sync with the SHS Oversight Committee, which have 5 vacancies right now. We would love for you to recruit folks. You all know smart people, so please get the word out and ask them to apply. It's 1 application for all the committees right now. We've created a rolling recruitment to create a pool from which we can select. So hopefully soon that seat will be filled and you'll have a new peer to join you soon. And then last month, Ebony raised the idea that it's been a year since the TCPB has been up and running, and we want to take a look at how we choose our co-chairs. I mentioned in that meeting we needed to connect with our council representatives from Metro Council. We continue that work with them. We're at a point of potentially finalizing a draft process, and we will be probably conducting that in the next few weeks via a survey. Okay. Those are my updates. I'm open to some questions on any of those updates.
Any questions on any of those updates, please, Ebony?
So my daughter did apply to the TCPB, but she is not sure if there's an age requirement. She's almost 16. So is there something in there about that?
I don't believe that there is, but I think I'm going to have to go back to our attorneys and ask if there are any general rules around Oregon public meetings. That's an amazing question. We'll get back to you. Thank you, Ebony.
That's exciting. Any other questions, comments, reflections? Did we want to ask for any county updates on any of the goal areas?
Before we get there, I think we got a very brief update from Director Rojas on recruitment.
Please.
Yes, we are still hiring, so just folks, please get the word out that we have a few manager roles with an equity manager position open right now, as well as our technical assistants.
Your mic's not on.
Hello? Okay, sorry about that. I'll say that again. We have an equity manager position open, as well as technical assistance, capacity building manager to support that team. And then we have also our operations manager is open, so if folks can please get the word out about those roles. We had an information session this morning, and we had over 50 people show up to learn about 2 positions. And we actually use the opportunity to really inform folks about who we are as a department, the work that Metro is doing, and giving folks also insight as to the future growth and positions that are coming. But there's a lot of interest, which is exciting. We've hired amazing folks already, and we'll continue to do so. But if we can get your help in letting folks know that these roles are open for this important work, that would be great.
Great, thanks. Patricia? Liam?
I think we should open it up to the counties for any updates from them, just to create that space.
Any updates from the counties? Trying to see our county folks. Vahid, you came on camera. Yep, that's a sign that you want to say something. Please.
Yeah, thanks. One update relevant to the TCPD's recommendation and goal areas. Clackamas County's Housing and Community Development Division recently hired 2 staff to launch our Health Housing Systems Integration Program. So this is an exciting addition to our team to help us move that body of work forward to implement the Medicaid waiver and better connect our systems of care from healthcare and housing response. One of them started this week and the other one starts the end of the month, but they'll be jumping into the work related to that recommendation.
Great, thanks Vahid, congratulations. Any other updates? It's buying a little time to see if, yeah, Jess, jump in.
Well, this is not much of an update, but I'm so excited because I have at home here the printout of our draft annual report. And I think this is just maybe by way of a general update of all of the counties and the many county colleagues on our teams who are working real hard right now to pull these final reports together for our second program year and getting really excited to share them with everybody. So a little teaser.
Yeah, it looks like it's redacted when you show it on the screen. It's all blurred, so we can't actually see it. But we'll look. Yeah, it's top secret. We'll look forward to indulging in that report. Okay, I was trying to buy a little time before Sahan. Yeah, Brianna, jump in.
Yeah, you're good. So I'll give a little bit of an update as well, kind of similar in the same vein to piggyback off what Jess is saying. We're making a lot of great progress on our annual report and we're really excited. We're working on it. We've got our first draft going and really just taken, the red pen to it and making sure that it has everything for you folks in there and for the public to be able to see all the progress we've made this year. So just wanted to share that. We're getting to an exciting place with it as well.
Awesome, love it. Thank you. Any other last thoughts for this part of our agenda? Okay, not seeing any. So I'm going to pass it to Liam and Abby. I'm pretty excited about this structured conversation that we're going to have. It'll be a chance for you all to hear from your peers around this table and as part of a panel conversation from the counties in a panel format, and then we'll create some space for Q&A. So really excited to pass it on to the two of you to kick off this conversation on technical assistance.
Thank you very much, Ben. It seems like a little bit of a while since you all decided on this particular goal. And in fact, I think at the beginning of the process, we included training for frontline workers in the same goal, but decided then to separate them because they were such distinct bodies of work. So today we're going to focus on the technical assistance aspect and the progress that has been made over the past few months since you set that as a goal. This one in particular is unique as compared to most of the other goals that you have identified, in that Metro is going to play a small supporting role, and it will grow over time in this area, whereas the other goals are exclusively, to a point, going to be implemented by the counties and county partners and the local community-based organizations. I'm pretty excited about where we're headed with this. The counties have each made a lot of progress since SHS was launched a couple of years ago. And the reason why they've made that progress is because there's a lot of demand. The TCPB isn't the only place where this has been identified as a growing need. As you heard, it's a need across all three counties, both in emerging new nonprofits as well as really well-established nonprofits, because SHS provided a lot of opportunity for existing nonprofits to expand their services. And what is really needed acutely are specific pieces in each of those organizations that are unique to them to help them grow, to help them stabilize, and to create a foundation for their staff to work in. We're going to start with this slide that is representative of the goal language and the recommendation, just to remind you all of what you agreed upon.
I think, can we get the slide on the main screen? Thank you. Oops.
It's okay, Ben. So this language is going to be familiar to you. It was approved back in March, a little time ago there. And I just want to point out, in both the goal language and the recommendation below, there's a call out for culturally specific providers, and we want to make sure that all the way through this process we are highlighting that work and prioritizing culturally specific service providers. Before we move on from this slide, is everybody comfortable with this language? You recall voting on it and approving it? Okay. We're going to move on to the next slide, and Abby's going to walk us through the problem statement that we have recently developed here at Metro. So go ahead, Abby.
Sure. So starting, as Liam mentioned earlier, the pandemic-related demand for services and combined with SHS funding really caused our service provider ecosystem to expand in a way we've never seen before, and put a lot of pressure on our service providers to deliver a lot more services quickly to a lot more people. Many providers lack the funding and technical expertise to set up structures and systems that can establish the strong organizational functionality and meet financial and programmatic reporting requirements. So just the structures that any business or organization needs to be successful on the back end of their services, that sometimes gets lost in the shuffle with all this programming. And so to preserve the organizational health and to serve people with consistency and achieve community goals, technical assistance is critical to these organizations. So we thought we'd define terms a little bit. These terms are not perfect. They're meant to be broad. They're meant to be general so that we can talk through them as a group and what they mean to us locally and regionally. So technical assistance is the direct application of third-party expertise to solve for a specific challenge or set of challenges, while capacity building is scaling up capacity to meet the growth in new and expanding programs. So technical assistance is a little more specific, although it can include lots of different kinds of technical assistance and intervention. And capacity building is almost always includes money in order to do those things that need building. Technical assistance sometimes includes funding and sometimes includes providing skills or expertise. Next. So luckily, We have among our TCPB members many experts on the use of technical assistance within service providers. So 4 of those experts are going to talk about their agency's experience, both providing technical assistance to other nonprofits and service providers and also receiving technical assistance support. We'll hear from Ebony first, and then Sahan, Manta, and last but not least, Zoe. So I will pass it over to Ebony to share some examples of technical assistance.
Thank you, Abby. Yes, so for the past 2 years, we've received a technical assistance grant. Good Lord, can we not get that camera so close to my face? Yeah, so we have received 2 grants for technical assistance, and this has allowed us to kind of create some strategies on how to build up better training programs, what trainings we need for our staff, and also trainings for myself. I am a new executive director. I've only been an executive director for about 2 years now. So, you know, I had managed people before, but never run an organization. And so there was a lot to learn. So I was fortunate enough to be able to work alongside a very experienced director and kind of know what I should be doing and how I should be operating things, what systems I need to kind of get in place or plan for, what my 5-year plan needed to be for the organization, how to better conserve funds so that, you know, if all my contracts ended tomorrow, I could still pay my executive staff for the next 2 years. So yeah, it's been very helpful. We got those through Washington County. We also received another small technical assistance grant around very detailed trainings that we should be doing. So yeah, we're probably, I would say, at the tail end of a comprehensive training plan to where I don't even have to think about it. As soon as somebody signs up, it reminds you what dates you have to do your training, what trainings you have to do, registrations, links, and also make sure that you are up to date on your certifications. So it's been really helpful, and I know a lot of other nonprofits have also received this. So yay. That's all I have to say, unless you want me to say something else about capacity building as well.
Thanks, Ebony. That was great. Is Sahan with us?
I don't see Sahan, so we'll call on him if he makes
Okay.
his way. I'll keep an eye out for him.
All right, let's move on to Manta.
All right, hello everybody. Monta here, Bridges the Change. So Bridges has been actually providing technical assistance to smaller organizations for about 5 years. And I think as Ebony said, and I was in her same position when I first started as well, often smaller organizations are previous service providers that don't yet have the skill set to manage the overall growth and expansion of organizations. So Bridges focuses in 3 areas that really are about risk mitigation. So we support organizations for their financial support in terms of policies and procedures, audits, managing budgets, forecasting, and things like that. We also help organizations manage contracts. What are the responsibilities of those contracts as it relates obviously to audits, finance, and then programs. And then the third piece that we spend a lot of time with is really supporting folks around human resources. Oftentimes, organizations don't understand yet the complexity that surrounds employee management, making sure that we're protecting our employees, which in turn protects the organization. So we spent a great deal of time focusing on those 3 areas. And I think for what we're talking about here today, and as not only SHS, but across the broader funding system that ask for organizations to expand, we really need to focus in and make sure that organizations from a risk management administrative perspective are really grounded. one of the challenges with capacity building is it implies that as you grow budget-wise, you get to buy more stuff. You get to bring in more sophisticated folks, systems. What I would like to see in this system is that we are standing up organizations and we are over investing on that front end for the administrative support they need around finance, human resources, and contract management. That way, organizations don't get over their skis and find themselves kind of in the pitfall or in the newspaper for just non-nefarious activities, but just lack of experience. And so with these, this for risk management in those three key areas, I think it's super important that from a TA perspective, and Bridges has been doing this on our own, resource for some time, but we need actual financial investments for smaller organizations to get the resources they need to get the technical assistance that they need. If that's a CFO, if that's an HR manager fully paid for, if it's outside, there's so much cost to legal support. So all these things are really super important, and I think is a key area for the system's greater expansion to invest greatly in these organizations. And oftentimes executive directors will say, no, I don't need that yet, because they're worried about other things, other finances, but we really need to get them the resources they need so they have the support that they need.
Thanks,
That's all
Monta. I see there's a hand up. Did we want to take that
You're
now?
facilitating this, but Chair Harrington, why don't you jump in?
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just didn't know that I understood Monta's last point correctly. I thought I was hearing a situation where for example, a new executive director of a small new agency may be saying, well, this is what I need right now is X, but given your experience, it sounds like you're saying, well, in addition to X, we need to train them up on Y or Z because they're going to need that next. So train them up at the forward part so they have the knowledge even though they don't know that they need it yet. Did I understand that correctly?
Yeah, exactly, Chair. Oftentimes folks don't even realize what they need yet. And so, as funders, and we're like, for example, Clackamas County, we would like you to expand this service. Sometimes that your staff, who I work with all the time, they know what an organization needs, and not always that organization doesn't always know what it needs. So really investing on the front end, which protects your resource as well, right?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Abby, back to you.
I'll pass it to Zoe.
What can I add from Ebony and Monta, because those were on point. Community Action have received capacity building funding from Oregon Housing and Community Services to strengthen, our data team, funding for our data team back in the time when we just started working with Service Point, and as well as granting some funding, we support with technical assistance with those organizations who were starting using the platform as well. And right now, we apply for a capacity building grant with Washington County, where we are going to utilize to do our needs assessments for our Washington County community. Our mission is to eliminate conditions of poverty of Washington County community. So we're going to utilize that resource in order to plan a very well and expanded needs assessment through our stakeholders and organizations and community in general. So those are kind of like type of capacity building and technical and assistance support. OHCS is providing a lot of technical assistance support right now. with reporting, submitting reports, and also the use of when you have to draft funds to utilize for our utility payments or rent payments. Those are types of technical assistant that comes to my mind from a funder.
Thank you, Zoe. Next, we're going to hear from the counties about their efforts around technical assistance. You heard a couple examples, one from Zoe and one from Ebony about Washington County's technical assistance, so I'll pass it to Jesse next.
Thanks. Is it on? Okay, yeah, okay, I think so. All right. So yeah, thank you both for laying the framework. I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail, and I'm going to add some other things that we've been doing these past couple of years too. As Abby mentioned, the SHS funds, added a whole bunch of money into a system that didn't necessarily have the capacity to not only deliver the programs, but also all that money comes along with financial asks, invoicing asks, and data quality and reporting asks. So one of the things we put into our system this year is we budgeted for any organization that had over 4 case managers to be given a data quality position to be able to support those data and reporting needs. We also changed our internal structure a little bit so that the HMIS team now works with certain organizations. So those organizations have someone that they can reach directly out to, and they're not just reaching out to a team in general. They have someone that they're paired with and can really focus on the needs of their organization. We also changed our structure around how we work with each individual provider. We used to hold office hours where people could kind of come and ask questions, and instead we're moving towards a provider-specific model where we meet monthly with each agency and can talk about the specific needs that they're seeing, whether that is around invoicing or data quality, and can really tailor the assistance to what is going on at that specific provider. And then I'm going to talk a little more in detail about what Zoe mentioned. We have also launched a specific capacity building technical assistance RFP, and it is a phased approach. So the first phase is allows agencies to apply to conduct an organizational assessment, and they can pick an area that they want to focus in. So that can be around financial infrastructure, data management, DEI assessments, organizational culture, professional development. Really, they can work with a list of consultants and approach, again, what they need in their specific agency. So we can pay for the consultant to do that work with them, and then they can come back for the phase 2 application and apply for up to $200,000 to implement whatever they worked on that consultant with. So again, very tailored to the needs of that specific organization. In the first go around, we had 18 organizations apply for a total, a little over $500,000 has been sent out to do that. And now that some of those initial phase 1 assessments are done, we are opening the phase 2 so they can apply for that $200,000 to implement whatever their plan is. So we're hoping, I think, for 10 initial applications in that phase 2, and then we're going to do another phase 1 opening in January. So any organization that didn't apply in that first offering can apply, because we really want to get to 100% participation of all of our agencies there. So and then the last thing I want to mention is we've also given culturally specific organizations, all of the 7 that we work with have each received grants of $50,000 a year for just anything programmatically that they need. There's very loose requirements around that money. So again, they can tailor it to what their organization needs to put that money towards. I think that's all I have for you today. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, we have Clackamas County.
Thanks, Abby. I think the approach in Clackamas County over the last 2 years to technical assistance is broadly similar to what Jesse just described. And my notes are kind of in the same order as what she presented. That's an accident. From the beginning, I think that technical support, technical assistance for providers in our programs centered around the support that our staff provides and has provided for the last 2 years. And that looks like a lot of the things that Jesse said. We meet monthly with our contracted providers, representatives of our program team, data team, contracts team are all there and can go over all the areas that the provider might need support on, including a kind of a monthly data quality check. There's a lot of data support provided by our HMIS team. We train all of the providers at the time that they're contracted. There are refresher trainings and retrainings provided on a regular basis, drop-in hours, office hours. So there's a lot of individualized support that our data team provides to providers relative to data entry and HMIS. We also hold regular kind of day-long convenings of the service provider community. These are fun, kind of inspiring, meant to kind of in really recognize the hard work that people are doing and take the opportunity to offer trainings during those in-person sessions. We call them the Housing First Aid series. We had one yesterday, I think, or this week. So there's a lot of support from our staff. Our program team consists of program coordinators, our specialists, subject matter experts in each component of our housing system of care, from outreach to shelter to housing navigation and placement to supportive housing case management. And those experts work individually with line staff at the providers as well, providing technical assistance training. And part of their work is to identify further training needs of the staff at the agencies that we work with. More recently, we launched an effort centered on contracts with 4 consultant organizational development organizations. So slightly different than the model that Washington County has launched, but to the same objective and with a lot of similarities. We directly contracted and gave 4 organizational development consultant agencies lots of runway in terms of budget and flexibility. So we've got them on contract, and then we've reached out to our providers with first access to culturally specific providers. So we were prioritizing access to this resource with our culturally specific agencies, and said there's these 4 agencies that do these amazing things, a whole wide menu of things that can help you with board development, fundraising strategy, your fiscal controls, your HR needs, your mission statement, whatever it might be that you need from by way of support. These are experts. These are third-party experts that can help you do that, and we're paying for those services. So raise your hand if you'd like to connect with them. Choose one or more of the ones we've gotten on contract and engage. Those services come at no cost to the agency. And it's also phased, similar to the phasing that Jesse described. You know, phase 1 is whatever the provider and the development consultant agree is the priority that they want to explore, whether that's, you know, whatever element of organizational development they want to dig into. And after they've done that scan and looked at what the needs are, if that process reveals that there's a need for further allocation of resources to that agency, they need an HR manager, they need some IT infrastructure invested in, then a proposal to us will come back in a phase out of that assessment where we can make a capacity building allocation to support that need and further their development. Finally, we've also made some specific individual allocations of capacity building grants to agencies to support kind of discrete and specific needs. I'll mention one example where in 2 cases, agencies were looking for ways to better meet their administrative costs. And they did not have a federally negotiated indirect rate. And they did not have a cost allocation plan, because that's a lengthy and technical and intensive process. And so the other option to cover their administrative costs was a de minimis 10% admin rate. And so we offered a capacity building grant to these 2 agencies to, you know, contract with an accounting specialist to develop a cost allocation plan. So those are examples of kind of our flexibility to make discrete allocations to support specific needs. One thing I will say about the 4 development consultant contracts that we have, we've also given them the ability and the resources to subcontract for more specialized needs. So while these 4 agencies may not be able to do anything and everything, they have the resources to contract with agencies that can. So we're confident that we're giving enough flexibility and resources to this project that we're able to come alongside and support our partners.
Great, thanks, Vahid. That was detailed and a lot that y'all are doing. Now let's hear from Brianna with Multnomah County.
Hi, folks. Pleasure to be here with you today. My name is Brianna Flores. I use she, they pronouns again, and I work for the joint office within the SHS team. Apologies for not being in person today. I'm having some transportation issues, but I'm happy to share some highlights on some of the work that has been occurring in this arena. Full disclosure, I did start with the joint office about midsummer, so I am still learning as I go. So there might be some questions that pop up that I might not have full answers to today, but I am more than willing to circle back on anything that we aren't able to cover today. So with that, let's go ahead and dig into it. So similarly, and I've heard this echoed in the conversation so far today, with the capacity building and TA funds, we noticed that there's organizations already providing these services within our system that really need the support to continue to do the work at the level they are and even increase that further. And so for fiscal year 23, these allocations were really intended for organizational development and infrastructure to really ensure that long-term stability and providing, making sure that these programs can continue to exist and we can continue to serve the folks that need it most in our community. So with that, to give a little bit more specific examples related to capacity building, for fiscal year 23, for the folks that receive service funds from the joint office, we saw folks and providers use these funds specifically to increase staffing, working to expand programming. So some of the initial costs associated with getting those programs to expand a little bit more. We saw some folks using these funds for enhancing their evaluation processes to understand how their organization's doing and to plan for the future. We saw these funds being used for improving operational systems, and even saw them being used for initial programmatic cash outlays to help reduce the burden that some organizations experience with the reimbursement model that occurs. So in addition, my goodness, to these investments, the SHS Advisory Committee within Multnomah County that we're working on has also started a capacity building work group. And so this subset of folks meets on a monthly basis, and we're working through some of the recommendations that they want to put forward to our larger advisory body and hopefully be able to raise those up. So we just met with this group last night, lots of good ideas flowing around how we can better serve folks in our community and better help providers within our community as well. And so I'm excited for, the momentum that that's gaining and the strong recommendations that I could foresee coming out of that group. To shift gears just a little bit into technical assistance. So we do have 20 qualified technical assistance consultants that we can work with. And there are some kind of main buckets of the services that folks can access services on. And I think this is similar to the other counties as well. But some of those buckets include change management and organizational development, program design, program development, implementation, and evaluation overall, helping folks with human resources, fiscal business services, and even strategic planning. So again, pretty wide buckets there, but folks are able to utilize these funds with what they need most, right? We don't want to take a one-size-fits-all approach with the providers we work with. So they have the flexibility to be able to do that. And another thing I just want to note with, and I think it's similar to what I heard from the other counties as well, while the joint office does hold contracts with specific technical assistance consultants, providers do also have the opportunity to utilize those technical assistance investments to contract with consultants that they may already have a relationship with that can better meet that need if they're not within that 20 qualified pool. So folks do have the opportunity to select who is the best fit for them with those funds as well. Again, just to give some examples about what technical assistance funds were used for in this last fiscal year, we did see a lot of that and those funds being put towards equity-focused education and training, and specifically coaching and training for folks within the organization, frontline employees being able to get the assistance that they need, and really working on increasing that education that the workforce has and being able to work with the populations that they serve. We also saw a lot of providers focusing on specifically items related to hiring practices. So we saw folks being able to hire HR consultants and being able to hire a recruiting firm to support the hiring processes and recruitments for some of their direct service roles, as well as maybe some more of their executive leadership to be able to give that holistic support where that was previously lacking without these funds. We're also seeing folks being able to use these funds for new infrastructure, for financial systems. I've heard smaller organizations mentioned a lot. And so some of these funds were used to help support those smaller organizations be able to create more capacity on that end, to be able to have those functions flow a little bit more smoothly. And then just general overall overarching, we saw some of these investments going towards the organizational and overall staff well-being, which is super important in the work we do, especially with the high turnover rates and burnout and just issues with retention that we see. So these funds are making a difference within our community. More internally focused, I do want to share that the Joint Office also sponsored a third-party consultant specifically rated to the Tri-County RFPQ to provide technical writing assistance and navigation support for providers that were working through that process. The programs team within the Joint Office as well, kind of similar to what Fahid was saying, works with providers on a regular basis, provides that technical assistance for folks a year round to address the needs as they come up as best as we can, and create those individualized solutions again. So not trying to create a blanket, here's what works for everybody, but making sure that folks are met where they are and we can help them to where they want to go. Another thing that I wanted to add that I just kind of want to throw in here, not a fully baked idea, but we are going to be convening our first provider conference at the end of this month. So that's something that's coming down the line. It's going to be for the providers in our community, those contracted, those qualified, and those just representing providers for working within Multnomah County. And right now we are still working on what those sessions are going to look like. But again, it's kind of like an all-day event, kind of what Vahid is sharing similarly, where we engage folks and be able to build those relationships. But I do see technical assistance and capacity building being potential topics that come up in that arena, and for us being able to brainstorm and work together live in the moment there. So that's something exciting that's coming down the line. I also want to share again, I know I don't want to go on for too long, but for the Joint Office specifically, our staff provided help with NOFA navigation support by hosting office hours for providers that were submitting those proposals and be able to work through that in real time with them to be able to provide that support. And our equity team has carried a lot of this work as well. So work around supporting the providers with their equity plans, as well as engaging them in equity work and with the providers to address what is going on with the ongoing and systematic barriers as well. So it's really a holistic approach. There's a lot of different folks working on this work, trying to move this work forward. And let's go here. The last thing I want to touch on before we get done here is I want to highlight that the Joint Office also has some designated positions regarding training. And so we do have 2 full-time positions designated to assertive engagement training with the goal of doubling what assertive engagement looks like and the capacity to do that within our system. We also have 1 full-time training coordinator that provides technical assistance and of course training to providers and their staff. And what this person does is they connect providers to training opportunities that are required, those that are desired, and then the gaps that we see in the system. So they're really trying to take that approach and again, meet the needs of the folks in the community and those that serve them. And last but not least here, we do also have 1 full-time position that's designated to domestic and sexual violence technical assistance. And this person is a program specialist that works in that arena. And really what the position does is it provides ongoing technical assistance and serves as a subject matter expert of DV and SV housing and support services programs to help drive initiatives for programs that are serving those DV and SV survivors in our community. So a lot of great work going on here. I know I ran through that as fast as I could to be able to share out, but lots of good work, definitely more things on the horizon as we develop. So thank you for the opportunity to share on that.
Thanks, Brianna. So much work in all 3 counties. Thank you all for your work. I'll pass it to Liam now to talk about metros.
I just wanted to give Sahan an opportunity in case you wanted to provide an example from your organization, Sahan, or we could move right on. I just didn't want to skip past you since you're here.
Thank you, Liam. I saw Ebony when I was walking in and she was walking out and told her that people are going to feel like it's not a fair trade that you're leaving and I'm showing up right now. But good afternoon, everybody. And sure, happy to share a couple examples. Get my thoughts recollected. But Just a couple simple things, just in terms of technical assistance that we have or continue to receive. One of those, we just went through our second HUD audit since we have been receiving HUD funds, started in 2015. So we had our first audit in 2019, audited with HUD again this year, and this audit went much better because we took the technical assistance that we received from them after the first one. But one of the things that continues to be something that me personally use assistance from them and guidance on is just the utility allowance equation and how to appropriately integrate that into our rent assistance so that we're doing that in an allowable way. So that's one simple example from them. Another example I wanted to share, just that goes the other direction, is some of the technical assistance that SCI provides to specifically smaller African-American nonprofits that are trying to get into some of this work. Specifically right now, we are in process of replicating our after-school program with one of our alumni who is setting up a nonprofit in Eugene. So to be able to do that will entail a lot of technical assistance on our part, and just wanted to say as a piece of this that that kind of thing has been happening with us and with a lot of other culturally specific providers for a very long time, and hasn't always been called technical assistance or funded as technical assistance. It's just been called the right thing to do, and have done that, and oftentimes come out of our pockets to do that. And when we're talking about technical assistance and technical assistance funding that we want to be able to infuse into our systems to maximize the work that our community will get out of all of us, I just want to make sure that those kind of situations are included in that conversation and don't get lost. So I wanted to be able to share just a simple example of us being able to receive technical assistance. We do receive some of that from our current local funders as well. And then also wanted to share an example of us being able to provide that. And again, just make the statement that want to make sure that that gets included and stays included in these conversations.
Thank you, Sahan, and sorry for putting you on the spot there, but I knew you'd pull through.
No problem, Liam, anytime.
You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming.
So that was a lot, and I'm going to get into what it means for the TCPB. I'm going to get into what it means for Metro in a second, but I just want to kind of take a deep breath, think about the slide that Abby presented around the definitions around technical assistance. I hope you got a good sense that it is extremely broad, dependent on the need. I mean, I took down a few notes here. Brianna was talking about, because of the reimbursement model for paying service providers, the Joint Office of Homeless Services in Multnomah County is putting some funding up front to cover some of those cash flow issues. Staff well-being was another one. Jesse and Washington County's model of once you cross 4 case managers, they then provide funding for a quality assurance FTE. And then I heard Vahid talking about the gap that is caused by the federal indirect rate. So those are just a few things that I picked up, but I think I picked up about a 10th. And I almost think it might be worth just listing off all the things for you all to really get a sense of what that definition of technical assistance means. Gio, could you move on to the next slides, please? And the next one after that, please. Great. So what does all this mean for us? Well, I'm going to talk about Metro's role first, and then we're going to dive right into the Tri-County Planning Body. So upon a budget note request from Councilor Lewis and Councilor Wong back in 21, I think it was, yeah, June 21, the need for technical assistance and the provision thereof was identified by our council. Council approved that budget note. In the interim period, we've done some work talking to service providers, talking to our jurisdictional partners, and as our department underwent an expansion this past year, we are launching a technical assistance team. But that title of that team will be called Regional Capacity, because it will not only house technical assistance, it will also include trainings, job fairs, conferences. But the point here is for Metro to provide value and do no harm. Where can we get in between and accelerate some of this work and appropriately provide consistency across the region. So for example, with technical assistance services, there are a lot of nonprofits, as we talked about many, many times here, that cross county lines and need similar services to do all the things that Sahan mentioned, Ebony mentioned, Monta mentioned, and Zoe mentioned. I think we collectively understand that we need to do this across the board. And I think it's validating that the Tri-County Planning Body voted on that recommendation language and the goal language that we presented at the very beginning here to demonstrate that we want to provide consistent services across the board. So where are we at right now? Well, Patricia mentioned earlier that we held a virtual open house for the regional capacity manager position today, as well as the operations manager. We had 51 people attend that for a full hour. We had about 22 stick around for another 20 minutes. We have a lot of interest in this position, and Patricia and I want to co-develop the vision for this team. We want to co-develop the implementation plan for the team itself. As you can see on the slide, it's a team of 6 people, a manager, 2 program managers, 2 coordinators, and an assistant. And again, I really want to underline, our job here is to add value and do no harm. How can we accelerate this work, and how can we ensure that the services are consistent across the Tri-County region? Last slide, please, Gio. Now, before you all get worried that Metro's going to go off and do its own thing and never come back to the Tri-County Planning Body ever again, this is a reassurance slide. We will be subject to the same review and approval processes as the other goals that you've approved. So that means once we have this manager on board, we will be working with that manager to develop an implementation plan, much like, or exactly like, what the counties will be preparing in the other goals too. So for example, in the landlord recruitment or unit acquisition or whatever we actually end up calling it, the counties will return with an implementation plan that will have a program description, a timeline, metrics for success, and a budget. We will be returning with probably 3 of those 4 elements. We won't be returning with a budget per se unless it requires RIF funding, but I might be giving you a preview of the next agenda item here. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we will be subject to the very same processes at the Tri-County Planning Body as the other goals. We are not going to go off and do this independently and just return and provide you updates when we feel like it. We are subject to your review. With that, we're going to open it up for questions. Please get your hands up online and use your name tags here if you want to ask some questions. Patricia Rojas, before we go to the questions, is there anything you'd like to add? I always like to make sure you have an opportunity.
Thanks. I'm not good at pushing buttons, I guess. Yeah, I do think that one of the themes here, beyond like, you know, be value add, do no harm, is that there are economies of scale here.
Mhm.
And really in the spirit of regionalization, technical assistance and capacity is at the heart of a lot of it. And so I think that is one of the main areas that Metro can provide support in. And just to be completely transparent, some of the counties have come to us and said, hey, can you help us with this? Because we could use your support here. And so we want to be responsive to when counties need some support, which is infrastructural in nature, that we have FTE to respond. And so a lot of what we're building not only is responsive to what council has been hearing and asked us to pursue, but also it's in alignment with what we're hearing from county partners and community partners. So I think the capacity that Metro is building is really to support the implementation of the technical assistance strategies that we develop.
Thank you, Patricia.
All right, we ready for conversation? We got name tags up. Let's go Mercedes and then Matt.
So first I had a clarifying question for Vahid. You mentioned that you had a financial or like accounting consultant, and then I think I lost the last part of what you said. Is it to justify 10% or to approve above 10%?
Where's Vahid? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's potentially to develop a cost allocation plan that, you know, fully funds their administrative and indirect costs, right? And so if they don't have a federally negotiated indirect rate, which these smaller agencies don't, and their feedback to us is 10% de minimis. We're struggling to make that work. That was why we made that allocation, that offer for that capacity building grant. So they could develop a cost allocation plan to fully fund the cost of doing business.
Okay, great. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't to just justify the 10%. Because that's what I thought I heard, and that wasn't great. But I am interested to know, of the counties, are you monitoring how many of your providers are stuck at 10%, which in the nonprofit sector we consider part of the starvation cycle? So do you know how many of your providers are stuck at 10%? And are you approving organizational rates, or are you approving the indirect contract by contract?
Do you want to start with Clackamas? Vahid, do you want to start there?
Sure, and also happy to let Adam step in here.
Oh, Adam, let's elevate Adam. Adam, so do you have a sense, and I think this will be a preview for probably, I don't know if it's Kanoi or Brianna, Jess or Jesse, but Adam, do you have the answer to Mercedes' question?
So I don't have the info offhand in terms of that distribution, but generally organizations have three choices. They can seek a federally approved indirect rate. They can have a formal cost allocation plan, or they can take the 10% de minimis, and that's generally accepted accounting standards for organizations. So we honor whatever rate it is that the organization has. There's no arbitrary cap on an indirect rate. So if an organization has a 22% federally approved indirect rate, we fully fund that rate. If they have a cost allocation plan, that's above 10%, we fund that, or below 10% for that matter, right? There's no one size fits all approach, because each organization draws different lines around the cost that it considers part of an administrative pool. And so really that model is intended to be equitable, to meet the organization where they're at and how they're allocating their costs. But that equitable framework requires having the fiscal technical capacity to structure the rate so it is adequately recovering all of the administrative costs. And I think that's been the historical struggle. And so the technical assistance really is intended to, get that technical expertise in the room with the service providers, understand their cost structure, understand how they want to structure their administrative cost pool. And then the counties are agreeing, okay, once you've established this methodology, we're going to fully fund your rate, whatever it is you come up with, so that you're fully recovering all of your administrative and indirect costs.
Thanks, Adam. So Mercedes, is your question really like knowing what that number is? Because there's probably a lot of organizations that are stuck at that 10%, haven't gone through this process, even though, to your point, Adam, there's some flexibility. Once folks have gone through a process, you'll pay whatever that is. But it sounds like your concern is like people haven't gotten there yet.
No, yeah, like I wanted to know, I mean, it's okay if the answer is no, right? Do you know how many of your providers are stuck at a 10% rate? It sounds like maybe no. Is for Clackamas. And then the other question was, is it approved organization at the organization level, or is it each contract is put through this financial review of what the indirect rate will be?
So for clarification, we do know. I don't know in this moment, but we absolutely know on a contract by contract basis what the rate is that we're paying. And in terms of the question about whether or not it's approved at the organizational level or contract by contract, organizations build their rates at that organizational level, and it should be consistent across all of the contracts that they have. In fact, if they have a federally approved rate or a rate period, they're actually required by generally accepted accounting principles to use that rate consistently across all of their funding sources. So yes, we know organization by organization what the rates are, and we're even working to communicate across the tri-counties about the rates that exist in contracts across the tri-counties. I've started checking in with my peers in other counties just to say, hey, let's try to align these things across the county so there isn't different rates being applied by the counties.
Great, so that sounds like some follow-up data. I imagine, Adam, if you don't have that on top of your mind, our other county partners may not as well, but Kenoi maybe, or Jesse, is there a different response for the other counties?
There is
Uh,
not a different, oh, go.
No,
There
go
is
ahead,
not a
Kenoi.
different response for us. We have the information. Brianna and I do not have it in this moment. And every year we work in the budgeting process at the beginning of the year to send out a survey to our providers to collect that information on what their rate is that year. So we can follow up with that as well.
Thank you, Kenoi. Jess?
This is an opportunity for improvement in Washington County, and we're just really grateful for Adam's partnership on this. The alignment, as he was speaking to, is what we are working on right now. So I'll just add that in, but in agreement with what all that my colleagues have shared.
Great, so, and it sounds, so that's a follow-up for data, but also a potential point of emphasis because the infrastructure and the technical assistance is available to help organizations get there. Patricia, it sounds like you have a follow-up, and then we'll go to Matt, and then Councilor Lewis.
Yeah, I appreciate this particular topic of the admin rates because we do want to align and honor federally negotiated rates. There are big complications that can happen if we are not aligning that when funding is braided. So if you have a negotiated rate by HUD and then we are not following the same kind of structure, it can then, the organization can then be penalized. So we have to be careful and mindful about how we are structuring the rates. That said, a lot of the smaller organizations don't have the technical expertise in their shops to pursue a negotiated rate. And so I think that regardless of how we think about it, this is an area where alignment would be very helpful to all of our system. And so I appreciate Jess kind of naming it as an area of improvement, because I do think that we can think about that way as a region as well. So I do think it's an area of focus that we should pay attention to.
Great. Adam, is that a new hand that you wanted to add more context?
Yeah, two things to add here. Three things. With what Patricia said, there was a historical issue where, like Multnomah County, for example, when I was there was an arbitrary cap at 15%, and we weren't fully funding an organization's federally approved indirect rate. So there's just this sort of an arbitrary 15% number, and we corrected that about 4 years ago and said, nope, we're going to fully fund those rates. The second thing is that I think one of the challenges for community-based organizations is when they need to invest in additional administrative infrastructure and the rate isn't giving them enough sort of administrative revenue, if you will, to make those investments. And in part, that's because the rates are based on a look back. It's based on historical actuals. And so that's one of the reasons why our capacity building allocations are so important, is because those allocations can be, limited term. Vahid and I were just talking this morning about, okay, well, maybe we need to make an 18-month capacity building allocation so that organization gets a full year of actuals of that HR manager, so that then it can be built into their indirect rate. And then in that third year budget, they're able to fully recover those costs as part of a conventional rate. So just trying to think strategically about how we help organizations get there on that full cost recovery. And then there's another historical issue, which is arbitrary caps from our other funders, including state and federal funders. And the state's a really good example of this. The homeless services funds like EHA and SHAP, administered by OHCS, they currently have a cap of 15%. And I've been having a 3-year dialogue now at the state about why that creates structural issues for community-based organizations. And I finally got their attention on the emergency order funds through a meeting with their program administrator, Mike Savara, and through their federal consultant, where he said, they're right. The counties are right. This is an arbitrary cap and it's squeezing our CBOs. And so for the EO funds, they've actually aligned this with the federal best practice, which is that indirect rates are considered a program cost. They're not part of the arbitrary administrative cap. So that's a win for us. But so this isn't just an issue here. This is an issue at every layer of local, state, federal funding that we have to work on this together to make sure our CBOs are adequately able to recover their costs.
All right, thank you, Adam. Let's go, Matt, then Counselor Lewis, then Christina.
Sure. Well, in my case, a comment and then a question. The comment is just how impressed I am with the work that's going on. This is, if we stop and think of the body of what's going on at this point, it's pretty remarkable. And one of the things that I just can't resist encouraging, because I think Monta started but others have said similar bits. It's very, very frequent in my experience that one of the biggest challenges people have is what's sometimes called the unknown unknown. I mean, you're a new executive director, you kind of can figure out a bunch of stuff, it's pretty obvious, but if you've not done it before, then you don't know what it is that you don't know. And sort of worse yet, if you're into a different cultural side, that is almost gets magnified beyond belief. I mean, one of the things I learned is very fortunate when I moved to be with a not-for-profit in the education world. Not-for-profits was not new to me, but education culture has its own special joys. And I was able to partner with a colleague who'd been a school superintendent for over 20 years. And he would, all we would do is just talk about stuff, be every few weeks. And, and I would talk about what I was doing and he would help me understand what did and didn't make sense in the culture that I was now entering. So I really want to commend the fact that I'm hearing those kinds of conversations going on. I think it may be almost more important than what folks sometimes recognize, and the value you can provide to somebody is extreme. The question that I have, I'm a little confused, and Liam, this might be for you, but also for comments from the county. When we look at this stuff, as Liam pointed out, there's a lot that crosses county lines. Homelessness is not divided by county, as we've said many, many times in these meetings. And what I'm curious about is from the Metro involvement, is it something like you would work to do the background checks, maybe on consultants? Is it something like you would develop a contract form maybe so that a consultant could apply and the contract would be automatically multi-county? And there's other examples I could give, but hopefully that gives you an idea. What are your thoughts on that and kind of where are we with those kinds of issues?
Matt, one, I appreciate the support for all the work that's been happening already, so thank you very much for that. And I also appreciate how quickly you want to get down into the detail, as always. I'll try and answer the last part first, and that is the counties have already issued requests for qualifications, qualifications a few years ago. We're about to help the counties out with that for contracts in the next 6 months. Actually, we have a person in the Metro Housing Department that's working out a class in this team right now, Ash, who's going to be helping the counties develop that request for qualified contractors. And that's going to cover a span of different kinds of services. But to the point about how do we want to ensure that they qualify, what kind of standards are we looking at? Well, we're government, so we have a ton of standards and requirements that people need to meet, and it's pretty thorough. I suspect that what you're really looking for, though, is almost to develop a standard for this kind of forum. I'm not sure that we're going to get there yet, Matt, because we haven't brought on a manager for this team yet, and we want to co-create a lot of these requirements and standards with that person, with Patricia. But hopefully it's somewhat reassuring to learn that we've done a Tri-County RFP queue in the past. We're about to do that again. Metro's stepping up to help the counties provide that. And as Patricia mentioned, building off of what I said, which is add value, do no harm. But where counties are seeking the capacity that we have to help them, we are ready to step in and provide that. And I see Patricia is ready to speak too.
I just wanted to add to what I think you're asking, which is what's possible.
Yeah.
Right, and I think a lot is possible. And so really it is a matter of what is most helpful and what is implementable at a particular point in time. So I think the work ahead of us, once we have some staff on board for this, is working collaboratively with counties, collaboratively with nonprofits, understanding what the needs are and what would be helpful, and then we'll back into any kind of structural changes or administrative changes that would be helpful. So it really is all of us working together to figure out what's going to elevate the work that's already happening, and where can we make improvements, where can we create efficiencies, where can we create alignment. And so that, to answer your question, a lot is possible. Really, it's going to be incumbent upon the collaborative work that we'll initiate.
And then I see your comment in the chat, Jess, around the RFPQ being for technical consultant services. And if I understand, Matt, what you're asking is that RFPQ basically going to create that roster of technical assistance providers that then could be deployed? So people are going through one shop and then distributed to counties? Is that what you're getting at?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's the sort of thing. I mean, it's one among a variety of examples. I fully understand until you're staffed up. You're not gonna be able to do that, but it seems like you're making awfully good progress there. And then, because if we know what the goal is, it's pretty important. And then people will sort of automatically, and because I think people tend to operate in very good faith, people are gonna kind of coalesce along that goal. So what I'm trying to do is to encourage us, which I think is Metro in partnership with the counties, to be in a position to figure out what are the goals of, and I would put that in terms of like issues, capacities that you want, where Metro would be taking the lead as opposed to an individual county doing something more specific for their particular needs.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Let's go, I think it was Counselor Lewis, then Christina, then Chair Smith.
Sure, thank you so much. I'm obviously super excited and appreciative of the work staff has done to bring us to this point. I got excited when it was made a priority of this body back in March, and I think that the development of the program.
Counselor Lewis, can you turn on your mic again?
Thank you.
Amateur hour over here. I'm still, even with a mic on, super appreciative of the work that's been done to build out this program and the opportunity to really make sure that we're abiding by the philosophy of being additive but not duplicative. I think we've heard a lot of grounding today from the 3 counties. But I also think it's important to recognize that this will be powerful because the TCPB will approve the work plan when the person gets on board. And it'll be a place where Metro is really sharing the power with the community that's doing the work. From a practical perspective, I think Metro has the ability not only to be a little bit of a more neutral agent who is really committed to delivering, but we also are going to be extremely committed to our partners who are going to be producing the data that then we turn around and in one of our later sessions today, we'll need to be manipulating and working with and using for our transparency that we've promised to the voters. So I got hooked a little bit on data, didn't hear a lot about data in the presentation today. And also risk assessment was mentioned by Monty, but not considered in some of the other presentations. And I think that's a place where I just want to highlight risk assessment is going to be really important, particularly as people are out running before they're walking in some of their new capacity. But we need to develop a kind of system where there's some amnesty about asking for that kind of help, because you don't want to raise your hand and ask for a risk assessment if you've got a risk and basically put a target on your back. So I'm wondering if anybody who's already doing this work around risk assessment assistance has a way to kind of open that front door without accidental exposure.
Yeah, thanks, Counselor. And I know Monta had to jump off for a board meeting, but he had kind of named it as the find yourself in the paper scenario. But, you know, and how do you identify those resources at the onset so it doesn't kind of get to crisis or get to a place of conflict? But is there anybody who wants to speak to other conversations that are happening around kind of the risk management and naming it without shaming it, if that's maybe the way to say it? To be continued, maybe?
Okay.
Okay. What are you putting that, Mindy? Okay, well, no, I don't see anybody ready to speak to that piece, so we can maybe follow up on that. I think it was Christina, then Chair Smith, and then Mindy.
I want to talk about the administrative cost that is given to organizations. I think that if we put ourselves into wanting to close the gap on equity, we need to be proactive. We need to be funding rural organizations, BIPOC organizations, smaller organizations at the higher rate. Not even like I heard what Patricia was saying about the barriers, and somebody else mentioned about like before 15%, it was a cap, and it was very hard to break that line when I used to work in a BIPOC nonprofit organization, and there was so much like barriers and information and this and that, and or smaller organizations, especially BIPOC organizations, they already have a hard time talking to funders about increasing capacity and getting administrative costs because they need to hire human resources or somebody that can help them to set up the organization to attract the funding that they need to run the organization to do the work. So I suggest that we all think about like how do we make it, how do we close that gap to make it equitable and like take that off the table and like have a cookie cutter for all organizations to be able to compete, and we elevate the need of rural organizations, BIPOC organizations, and smaller organizations. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. So I don't know if there's any reflection for folks, but it might be an additive as part of the ask that Mercedes made in terms of understanding the landscape of where organizations are falling, to disaggregate that analysis by, I think I heard you say rural and BIPOC, culturally specific. But maybe Adam, I'll look to you as our resident finance officer. Is that possible? Or do you have any reflection back, right? I mean, I think that, you know, what I hear Christina saying is there's a unique disparity that exists for smaller rural and culturally specific organizations where not just the ability to get to a higher rate, but the necessity of a higher rate has all these other implications. So maybe it's two-part. Do you have any reflection on that comment? But also, is that some of the data that this group could get going forward?
Well, I think it gets back to meeting organizations where they are, and we're trying our hardest every day to be to show up different as government. It requires us being self-aware about the historical inequities that have been perpetuated by county contracting processes and leaning in. Like the first example of that was when we released the Tri-County RFPQ. We knew right away that if smaller culturally specific organizations were going to be able to apply to be part of that pool, we needed to help lift them up and provide them the technical assistance that they need to speak government language, to articulate how they deliver programs and services, because maybe they didn't have experience with that. It didn't mean that they weren't fully equipped to meet our programmatic needs. It just meant that they couldn't play the game in the way that government's historically structured it. And so I think, you know, I'd be happy to talk to Christina about ideas that she has, but we're all ears when it comes to trying to find ways to show up different, meet the organizations where they're at, and give them the tools, resources, support that they need to come into the fold and deliver programs and services.
Great. And then is that data, I mean, I think they ask around disaggregation, is there a way to kind of present that information back to this body that really kind of differentiates size of organization or culturally specific?
I think I need to understand the question a little bit better and maybe follow up with the group.
Let's do that. Let's go Chair Smith, then Mindy, then Sahan, and then I think we'll need to probably transition to the next part of our agenda. Chair Smith?
Thanks, Ben. I'm already late for my 5:30, so I'm going to have to exit off this meeting. And this may be premature in the overall agenda. But one of the speakers earlier talked to transparency for the public. And I think, of course, I support full cost recovery, even for Metro and what you're offering as far as the administration of these meetings, for instance. There's cost to that. I support that. But what I think is very much lacking before we get down the road of hiring all these people and deciding what they're going to do, I think maybe one of our next hires needs to be an accountant, because I would like to see monthly budgets of where y'all are spending the money. Because if we had an audit, we could not answer the questions of the audit or even provide basic detailed financial information to support an audit. And I don't think that's good fiscal responsibility. We have a lot of money coming in fast and furious, and we're all getting it out the door, and we've identified problems with, Christina spoke eloquently about the disparities. Well, an accountant who could possibly help with that. So maybe not a single accountant, quite possibly an accounting firm, because we deal with these all the time at Clackamas County. We have an internal auditor housed in our Treasury Department, and it's 2 very full-time staffs that are constantly doing audits for our departments and our offices and our programs. And it's very important. And we always find deficiencies where we are lacking. And this group hasn't even done anything regarding budget responsibility, transparency, and hiring an auditor and, or more importantly, an accountant. So as far as Clackamas County approving and going forward with new hires, I'm only 1 vote. It doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. But I think there's some very serious overarching management issues that need to be addressed as we go forward on this. Thank you all. I don't expect answers directly with this, but I'm going to continue to push for this particular item until I'm satisfied that we are exercising full transparency and not just going after the next great idea to fund. That's what I see. Thank you all. You all are wonderful, but I've got to run, and enjoy your evenings.
Thanks, Chair Smith. I saw a couple Metro cards pop up. So I don't know, I think you had to leave, so you could watch the responses maybe in the future. But Councilor Lewis, I'll pass it to you and Patricia, and then we'll kind of, yeah, please.
Sure, thank you so much. I appreciate the comment in which the spirit it was given, but take me out. I don't know how to use a mic. But I guess I just wanted for on the record to be very clear that while I appreciate the spirit of the comment, there are a couple of things that everybody needs to know. One, Metro has an auditor. He's an independent auditor who's elected by the entire region of Metro. And he has, I believe, 4, if not 5 staff who work on audits that rotate throughout all of the agency. But within the past 2 years, we've had 2 housing audits. So it is not a blind spot for our auditor. In addition, the measure required an annual audit of the funds collected, and that we use an outside accounting firm for. When it comes to an actual accountant, we actually have FRS, which is like, I don't know how many accountants on staff. And Rachel Lumbo has been our lead, and she's one of our best FRS staffers. And I would put her up against any certified accountant in the state. So I do actually think we have the infrastructure that was asked for. The question being, what level of financials does this body expect every month? And that's maybe what we need to address, making sure you have the information, the infrastructure's there, the accounting is there, the audits have been done and will continue to be done. I'll hand it over to the actual professional staff to fully detail what we've done to make sure we're spending taxpayer money efficiently and to the exact letter of the law that was passed by voters.
Thank you, Councilor. I'll note that we have 2 other oversight bodies that Related,
Thank you,
please.
Councilor Lewis, for grounding us so gently and thoughtfully. A couple of things I want to highlight and thank Chair Smith for her comments. Just to clarify, we do have an oversight committee that has a charge of financial oversight. It meets monthly. And in that monthly meeting, we provide a report of all finances Metro has. We, on a quarterly basis, are providing a comprehensive financial report of all of the jurisdictions based on quarterly reporting. So we invite the chair and others in the public to please join us in our oversight committees. You can review materials as they're all published publicly. And in terms of process, Metro Council approves the FTE for Metro, and the COO oversees the implementation of that FTE. And what we are committing to here as Metro staff is to work in alignment with you to make sure that as we bring on FTE, that the shared vision and goals we have are going to be able to move forward through that mechanism. So that, just to be clear, is our responsibility as Metro, and I just want to kind of place the responsibility of where the FTE and our staff and the structure of Metro reside, and at the same time, our commitment to work in collaboration and full transparency with everybody.
Thank you both. So your RIF conversation might be pushed off, but it feels like this is a really important dialogue we're having. I think it was Mindy, then Sahan, then Nicole.
Sure, thanks. I really appreciate this conversation. A couple things wanted to highlight. Through the 1115 waiver, the Medicaid waiver, there is also pretty significant capacity building dollars coming into the state to be able to get ready for providing housing, climate, and food services. And so that's about $110 million statewide. If you think that we are 30 to 40% of the Medicaid population in the Tri-County area, at least among the two CCOs here. That is a significant amount of opportunity there. And so I appreciate the let's ramp up slowly, let's make sure we do no harm. I think between housing and health, making sure we don't have technical assistants to help the technical assistants, and are layered over each other. And just wanted to uplift, I think, what Monta talked about, and Sahan about, to what extent can we empower organizations that are already providing that set of supports to their, other community members. I think that's really important. And then just also want to flag that I'll be interested in using the power of this group to really solve some of those problems that the technical assistance uncovers. The things that Mercedes lifted up are really kind of intractable policy. They're not intractable, complexly tractable policy issues. I appreciated Adam saying I've been working on this for 3 years and finally got attention, and just the amount of voices. I think we will uncover more of those things that are structural problems that are getting in the way and not just simply upskilling effort. I think they'll be part of that too. So hope that we can hear about what some of those are and be thinking about strategically how we address those policy issues.
That's great. You said a lot right there, Mercedes, without saying anything. Sahan, please.
So wanted to first just comment that I really appreciate a lot of this conversation, and Adam, specifically, you bringing up some of the capacity building dollars that you're trying to infuse in your county, and others who have spoken about that as well. And I know that we're talking about this in the context of technical assistance, and we went to indirect rates as a piece of that, but want to speak to just the usefulness of capacity building dollars, but also the hope that that would be a temporary usefulness. Because when we're talking about that in the context of being able to help somebody get to a place where they have an adequate indirect rate is only helpful if you have an adequate direct funded allocation as well. So if your total allocation is not appropriate and 100% is not enough to cover your direct costs, then shifting your indirect costs from 15 to 25%, you're still short. And you're still in the poverty cycle of providers that Mercedes talked about earlier. So whether your rate is 8% or 10% or 15% or 25%, if you don't have enough to be able to fulfill what programmatically you are being tasked with or what your community needs service-wise from you, then that needs to be addressed overall as well. So, and I say that capacity building dollars are great, but hopefully it's a temporary solution, because the permanent solution would be you don't need capacity building because you're funded to the capacity already. And then you don't have to build more on top of that. So, and that just in the context of the conversation around how are we funding indirect rates. And also just wanted to speak briefly to technical assistance as a whole. Really appreciate hearing Patricia and others talk about the add value, do no harm philosophy, and just want to be able to ensure that that is always how technical assistance that is coming through, and make sure that we are not telling providers, do this and I'm going to show you how to do it. We are asking providers what is going to add value to you, and Matt spoke to the unknown unknown. If I don't know what is going to add value, then our responsibility is to help you figure that out for you, not for us to tell you this is what you need and then I'll show you how to do what I need you to do. So I just want to make sure that we really, really get to stick to a place where not only is that our intent, but that is how our technical assistance proposals are received by our communities as well.
Yeah, thank you for that, Sahan. Are you trying to, okay, quickly.
Real fast. Just on the admin question and indirect rates, is that the Oversight Committee does have an explicit charge to review those rates and make sure that we are on track. So I just wanted to name that intersection here, that as we're talking about the implications, I think there is a financial oversight responsibility there that I thought was important to name.
Thank you. Nicole?
Well, I also appreciate all the work that's being done and the reports today. Just a quick question, Liam, you kind of spoke to this a bit, that there are so many different ways that the technical assistance funding is being used, and I'm curious if that varies from county to county, or if there is sort of a standardized description of what would qualify as technical assistance funding. Like I was speaking with an organization who, was struggling with the reimbursement model and not having enough funding to be able to move their programming forward. And I've heard that described with one county, but I'm curious if that applies to all three, if that list that you maybe mentioned, Liam, applies across the county, the Tri-County area.
Thanks for the question, Nicole. That warms the cockles of my heart, as my grandmother would say. I think as we hear today, each of the counties have developed a different approach to providing technical assistance to service providers, but I also think that each of the counties in the first 2 years of SHS have tried to exchange ideas, exchange what they've learned through their own, I don't want to call them experiments, but the way in which they've proceeded with different approaches. I think we want to get to a point where that exchange has developed into a consistent standard opportunity across the board for service providers to access. So to answer your question, right now, I think counties have developed incredible models for delivering technical assistance with a broad array of options, but we do want to get to a point where service providers can expect a consistent standard across the board, across the three counties.
Okay, thanks.
It looks like Jess, did you want to also respond?
That's okay. I'll take my hand down.
You're good? Okay. Bless you.
Bless you.
So we're at 5:47. I'm looking to Liam. So I don't know if we want to tee this up and then combine RIF 2 and 3 at the next meeting. I don't think we have enough time to get a robust conversation that I think it deserves.
Well, fortunately, Ben, this is part 2 of part 3, so we can, with some ease, combine the two presentations next month. I think it's going to be really important, though, to create some time for the Tri-County Planning Body members to discuss, ask questions, bring their own thoughts. And Matt has been working with us over the past few months to try and have us deliver information, slide decks well in advance of the meeting. I think in this particular case, it is especially resonant that we want to be delivering that information so you all are able to come and discuss one of the key areas in which you have direct influence. And so we will endeavor to provide that information, as we will for the other agenda item that we mentioned earlier today, which is the landlord recruitment piece. We should have, well, I say that now, we should have plenty of material in advance for you next month. I'm going to commit to it right now. You hear me?
Well, thank you. Well, I wonder if you want to tee up. I mean, we have, a good 10 minutes. Is it better to just move it to the next meeting, or do you want to tee it up and ground us in the type of conversation we're going to have so folks understand what's coming?
I would prefer to combine it because I fear that if we start getting into it, it will elicit a number of questions that will frustrate people because we won't be able to answer those questions in the time that we have today.
Yeah, which is why I didn't cut this last conversation. I think there could have been some frustration if we didn't do that. Well, in the spirit of that, so I don't know, Steve Rudman, I see your hand, so why don't you jump in?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. I thought it was terrific presentations today. I was very impressed with the variety and the substance of the efforts each county's doing. And it kind of leads to the other agenda items, like next month, we're going to deal both with landlords, recruitment, and that's happening in all 3 counties, as well as technical assistance and training. And I'm still trying to struggle with, we have some bullish efforts going on in each county. Then we have Metro saying, how can we come in and add value? We clearly don't want to trip over each other. So I think it's really important that we are able to have honest discussions about what makes sense to do regionally and what makes sense to do by each county, and to have the biggest bang for the buck. But I just want to say I'm pretty impressed with all the work. You don't hear these good things all the time, but there's a lot of good work going on in the county. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that comments, Steve. Liam?
I just want to thank Mr. Rudman for his comments. It's really helpful to hear. And I also want to say that Malia alerted to me that we have 0 absences today. That's incredible.
Hey, look at
That's incredible.
All right, we'll celebrate that. Well, maybe I'll offer a little bit of reflection if there's no other hands up, cards up. Because I really, appreciated the dialogue that we just had. And while I have several pages of notes and lots of very specific examples, there's a few themes that maybe I can reflect back on and we can hold as we continue to have these conversations. One, that just acknowledging the suite of services, if that's the way they're described, right? The technical assistance capacity. And I'm not going to walk through all the individual executions of that, but they're a really wide range. And Abby, I think you started us at that place of, right, we're defining them broadly so they can be executed broadly. Several folks used the frame of kind of meeting folks where they're at. I think, Adam, you said that several times, but and Steve, it gets to maybe some of your comment as well, is, how do we maintain that organization-specific focus that's flexible, that's responsive, that's meeting the needs at the local level, but also overlaid with what I heard many of the counties talking about is that there's county-specific relationships with providers, and those ongoing and consistent and sustained relationships have been really important. And, can you regionalize that? Maybe that's part of the question that we have to continue to have discussions on. I think Monta particularly talked about that kind of early investment. I think this frame of, you don't know what you don't know, but overlaid with some of the organizational assessments. And then, of course, to what Sahan was just challenging us on is, sometimes there's things you just don't know you might need, but also it's not coming in and saying, we know what you need, right? And there's some nuance there in terms of organizations speaking for themselves. The other piece that I noted is really building it into, I appreciated just hearing from the counties, like building this into contracts. And so right at the outset, you really understand that these services and TA and capacity building resources are available. And then just coming back, I think, Sahan, when you said that, the emphasis on not just the relationship between resources and need, but I really embrace this, the right thing to do, right? And just being able to hold that as a frame. So it's not just meeting people where they're at, but, ensuring that we're investing in the type of resources that meet the community need, both now and in the long term. There's probably a million other things. Matt, fill in some blanks for me, please.
We have, from my own observation,
Is your mic's not on?
Okay, now that was Patricia's fault.
Yeah.
See, this is Metro's problem.
Yeah, that's right,
So
that's
anyway,
right.
okay.
Something.
Yeah, right, anyway. So let me repeat. I mean, one of the things that I've observed and, and particularly as a co-chair, which, maybe helps me to pay more attention or whatever. The quality of our conversations has been getting, in my opinion, better and better with each meeting. And I think some of that is we get to know each other. I think that we are better prepared in terms of the issues. We've now been able to think through them. And so I want to comment on that and also on how people build on stuff. I thought Sahan did a much better job than I did in dealing with the unknown unknowns, because he put it in a broader context than I did, and I think that's really, really important. So I want to really express my appreciation to everybody. The question and the thing, though, beyond that, I do have a worry, and the worry is, do we have enough time to address the issues we need to address? I can't help but think, I mean, next time we'll have the RIF or whatever it's called, that's a non-trivial topic. And then, oh my heavens, landlord recruitment, which is sort of foundational at one level. And there's just all kinds of issues around that. And what I have noticed is, despite Ben's good efforts, and I think Ben's gotten pretty good at this, that we're struggling with time frame issues. I don't have a solution at this point. Maybe we need to have our meetings go a little longer from time to time. Maybe we need some interim stuff in between. I don't know what the right answer is. I want to be very respectful of the fact that everybody's got tremendous commitments. That this is a serious time commitment that gets in the way of some extremely busy people that are around this table and on the screen. And I want to be respectful of that. But I would just encourage us to give that some thought. Pass your thoughts back, whether it's to Ebony and me, to Ben, to Liam, to Patricia, whomever, and such. And then just again, thank you all very much for what I think has been yet another really, really positive, constructive meeting, making significant progress.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And we'll hold that, right, in terms of not just how we design agendas, how we facilitate our conversations, but, when we're talking about landlord recruitment, we're talking about technical assistance, I mean, these are goal areas that y'all created. And so the time and space to do your due diligence, to have these conversations, to dive deep and understand often the complexity, but the possibilities seems really important. And so, obviously for today, this was a kind of facilitation decision to say this conversation needs to keep going. I could have stopped us earlier and said, do you want to keep going or not? I think y'all would have said, yes, let's keep going on this conversation. I got some questions and responses and reflections, but let's revisit that. And so maybe Matt just challenged us to think about, are there times where adding 30 minutes to our meeting because of the crux of the conversation we know we're going to have will be important. It doesn't have to be every time, but I think being strategic about that and consistently trying to make sure we're holding our best intention around the agendas. Chair Harrington, please.
Am I correct in understanding there is a question in that, Ben?
I think it's a consideration for the future. What Matt, I think, had suggested is there may be times where the content of our meetings may require us to add time. And what I'm suggesting is let's think about that as we also think about constructing our agendas, asserting our facilitation to say we're at time for this agenda. There's times, yeah, please.
Let me stop you there, which is why I raised my hand. At this juncture, I would really appreciate if someone could help me understand what the result of that good discussion that a bunch of you highlighted has brought forward. I mean, I heard good report outs from the counties, from Metro, And then there was all kinds of discussion, and maybe I'm just the wrong kind of person to be here or super tired and didn't follow the discussion, but I can't really figure out what the result was. And so I just wanted to let you know, in terms of that facilitated discussion, great that there was all that discussion, but I got left behind somewhere. I don't feel like I'm on the same journey as you. That's all. So that's why I was looking for a little bit of a summary. I don't mind at all that there was that discussion, but I just, between all the talking that was happening, I can't figure out what the common thread was. That's my problem.
No, thank you for that transparency. So Matt, I won't answer for the group. I have some thoughts, but Matt, I'll pass to you first.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you, Chair. I think my answer to that would be that what we have done is to create a deeper level of common understanding, and I think we have created alignment in terms of the approaches to be taken. Metro looks to this entity for guidance. We are, as I've said many times in these meetings, a co-creation organization. We're not an oversight group. And I would believe that Metro now has, I think, some pretty good guidance as to how to go about their role. So I appreciate that. I'm sorry if it was a little obscure, and your point is accurate to that. But at least for me, I sense alignment. I sense a building of trust. I sense a deepening of understanding. And I sense that Metro now has relatively consistent and I think relevant guidance on how to go about their task of working on the assistance, the technical assistance and capacity building. So just my view, could be dead wrong, been dead wrong many times in my life, but for what it's worth.
Nicole first, and then I'll close this out, please.
I was just gonna say, I appreciated the little chart that you guys emailed out from Metro that clarified the TCPB's role in the different agenda items, and the fact that there was, information gathering was part of something, advisory was another piece of it, and kind of clarifying where there are decisions to be made. So I love that. I think that's really helpful as we come to these meetings to be able to prepare for what our specific role looks like as we have these conversations. So thanks for that.
I think you did ask for it, so that's good. And Chair Harrington, again, I don't speak for the group, but I will say, as I understand this process, as this group moves from the goal language ultimately to a regional plan, this conversation for me is about doing due diligence, right? You're hearing some of the examples that have come up, but ultimately, this is a goal area that this group ultimately will be proposing to the SHS oversight that will allocate resources potentially using regional funds. And so for me, this is a conversation that allows folks to say, what does this goal actually look like in practice? What questions do we need to ask as a tri-county planning body to do our due diligence, your due diligence, to ensure that as this moves from a bunch of words on paper to actual regional execution. And I think Steve, I don't know, is Steve still here? Steve's comment about, what makes sense to do regionally and how do we allocate funds is going to be a really important one. So, maybe that's shared by the group, maybe it isn't, but that's how I felt it. Chair Harrington, back to you to close us out.
No, I just wanted to say I'm glad for all of that. That's great, really.
Well, I appreciate it. And thanks for, I think we should challenge ourselves to make sure that we're using our time effectively and making sure that we're continuing, to Nicole's comment, every time we're having a conversation, be as intentional as possible about why we're having it and what's the outcome. So a good reminder for us. So at 6:01, at least according to mine, that clock looks a little fast. Thank you all. That was a great conversation. We'll see you next time. Have a great night.